Hello, everybody. This is Monica Paolini from Sensafili, and we're talking about progress in Open RAN, in developing the ecosystem, getting it to a commercial, large-scale state. And I have the pleasure today to talk to Nirlay Kundu, who is a distinguished engineer in network planning at Verizon. And Nirlay, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks, Monica. Thanks for the intro. Yeah.
Yes, it's really a pleasure, and it's great to hear what you guys are doing. So everybody knows who Verizon is, obviously, but maybe you can give us a little bit of an introduction in terms of what is that you personally do at Verizon and the latest update on the Open RAN progress.
Sure. So thanks again, Monica, for giving me the opportunity. So I'm part of network planning organizations in the standards group. I also collaborate with global operators, exchanging ideas around different topics related to 5G. So mine is a technology agnostic role, and I work generally, anything to do with in the 5G area. So in terms of how 5G is evolving, so as you know, 5G is shifting the perception of what's possible, right? It's a vertical agnostic technology, right? Verizon has led the way in developing and deploying 5G and accelerating the 5G innovation. So we have been using the latest technologies and platforms to deploy the most technically advanced 5G. Yeah. So Verizon's 5G is based on virtualization, virtual infrastructure, and moving to containerization. So from the core to the edge, right? It combines end-to-end fiber resources throughout the network with a dense network of small cells, macro cells, right? So, and then spectrum, right? So our industry-leading spectrum holdings provide an excellent foundation for rapid deployment of 5G. And this has allowed us to provide keenly differentiated experience for our customers, right? And paves the way for extraordinary innovation and growth in the future. I'm very proud to be part of this elite team that allows us to deliver the network that move the world forward.
Absolutely, and you really should, because there's a lot of great work that you're doing. And I guess with Open RAN, the great thing is that we were seeing all the operators coming together, working together, and it's a great thing to see this kind of collaboration, which really makes sense to get the best out of the technology. So let's talk a little bit about Open RAN in general, and then we can talk more specifically about what is that you guys are doing at Verizon. Now, let's just start. What are the main benefits? Because oftentimes people say, well, you just, it's cheaper, but is that enough? I think there's more than that.
Yeah, that's a great question to start with. So let's start by aligning what we are trying to accomplish, right? So 5G is beginning to touch nearly every industry sector. So that's the main difference between 5G and 4G. So it's vertical agnostic, right? So we believe that it will impact the global economy in a profound way and dramatically improve our global society. So the capabilities of this new technology is almost unlimited. Yeah? And thanks to the early and ongoing coordination with partners around the world, we have already gotten a strong glimpse of into the future solutions that will be built on top of our 5G network. We are working with a very exciting collection of startups, tech leaders, academic institutions. We are seeing developments in autonomous cars, smart communities, industrial IoT, and immersive education. All these will rely on the 5G capabilities, right? So it's so this technology it's paving the way for unprecedented innovations that will reshape the world.
Yeah.
But reaching these levels of innovation and digital transformation in our society requires a fundamental transformation of the networks that our world runs on. So at Verizon, we have been undergoing this massive network transformation for years, which has positioned us to be able to drive this new technology revolution and lead the industry in the 5G development and adoption. And a huge part of this network transformation is network virtualization, right? And moving on to containerization, right? So the importance of virtualization in the modern network, it's very important, right? And the key 5G use cases like massive scale IoT solution, then more robust consumer devices, AR, VR, remote healthcare, autonomous robotics, in the manufacturing environment, and the ubiquitous smart city solutions, to name a few, right? So they all heavily rely on the programmability of these virtualized networks. So virtualization is critical for advanced operations and services like network slicing, right? Edge compute. And all these require programmable network with the ability to move functions and operations across the distributed network, right? So the key to this evolution is the advantage of being able to decouple the software and hardware in our network using the ORAN, and thereby lowering the barrier to entry and welcoming more vendors into the ecosystem. So today we define many of the network parameters to serve these solutions rigidly and manually. I'm referring to the PNFs and the physical network functions, right? Now, using orchestration and automation capabilities at scale of virtual infrastructure, we will automate the network configuration changes and resource scaling dynamically based on demands. So this is one of the greatest benefits of virtualizing a network, essentially building programmability in the network. Yeah.
Yeah, and I really like your approach in terms of seeing it within the bigger context of the transformation, because it's not a step function where you either have or not have Open RAN. I mean, at some point you might have that, but it's really Open RAN makes sense if you look at it in the wider So can you say, because well, the other thing is that you started all the virtualization more from the core point of view, so it's kind of more expanding towards the RAN, I would imagine, right? So can you tell us how is the relationship between virtualization and Open RAN? Because you could argue you can have an Open RAN without a virtualized network.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe you can tell us a little bit about how the two sync together and
Mm-hmm.
sustain each other.
Right, right. So, I would say, let's start, spend a minute on vRAN or the virtualized RAN and, importance precursor to the ORAN, right? So, Verizon has undertaken, massive multi-year redesign of our network architecture that consolidates, simplifies, and modernizes our core and access networks, right? So virtualization and orchestration are the key components of this modernization. Now, along with many of our vendor partners, we have been leading the charge of the design, development, and deployment of virtualized radio access network technology. And then this move to the cloud native, right, container-based virtualized architecture. So this has led us to achieve more flexibility, faster delivery of services, greater scalability, and significant cost efficiency of our network. So historically speaking, so early in 2019, right? So we announced the virtualization of our core network with cloud native containerized architecture. Moving on to 2020, we announced that we achieved full virtualization of baseband functions, right, which is the heaviest portion of computing on the RAN, right, and then have aggressively been deploying the solution throughout our network, right. And then we announced similar achievements for our C-band deployment, which is still going on, right. So Verizon has launched a commercial virtual RAN, including the virtual distributed unit, the VDU, right, and the virtual centralized unit, the VCU functions, right, and deploy on common off-the-shelf COTS hardware across the network. So with this, virtualized BBU, we have laid the foundation for deployment flexibility, scaling, and rapid integration of services for the existing and new use cases.
Yeah, and so clearly you have a huge amount of experience in virtualization. And as you move to the RAN domain. Are there any challenges that you're facing in, expanding virtualization all the way to the edge? Is there anything that it's more
Sure.
difficult or?
Yeah. Yeah, like all new technologies, it comes with challenges, but, let me address, the general picture and kind of pick at some of the challenges, some of the issues, right? So open systems, as it's a distributed systems and therefore very complex systems, which raises issues of interoperability, orchestration, and management that go above and beyond what the traditional networks have to deal with, right? And service providers will have to take responsibility for system integration and hence the resulting quality of experience, right? Or outsource this to another system integrator. And there are other complexity factors such as complex makeup of the ecosystem itself, right? So each player in the ecosystem have different backgrounds, different business objectives. Hyperscalers have also come into the picture, right? And they leverage their cloud infrastructure to offer high level telecom applications as a service to multinational organizations, right? So all of these adds to the increasing the network entropy, a large ecosystem of suppliers competing with each other. Now let me pick on some of the specific areas like security is one example, right? So the disaggregation of the RAN increases the number of individual elements and network connections. And this has prompted a valid concern, right? And a perception from some that Open RAN could be potentially more insecure than its closed predecessor due to a greater number of open interfaces. So it's a valid concern, but one of the more impactful aspects of Open RAN is on security is the ability for the operators to directly manage trust in the networks. And going on the similar lines, it's with the same understanding that an active work stream with the ORAN Working Group 1 is currently addressing security concerns for real-world deployments, and many of which are not necessarily isolated to ORAN. It's a generic area. Yeah. Then interoperability, right? So I alluded to interoperability, and because of the viable interoperability challenges for the entire RAN, Open RAN ecosystem, it's a daunting task, and therefore top priority of Open RAN test and integration focus group. So conformance, performance, interoperability of all the main components of this disaggregated architecture, right? So that's envisioned by ORAN Alliance, right? Yeah. Efficiency is also a concern, like running software-based virtualized Open RAN applications. So that may not be presumed to be as efficient as processing them on PNS, right? On purpose-built hardware, right? But the ability of the Open RAN components to scale and be more flexible and drive down the cost through increased competition, innovation, and volume. So that, in my mind, offsets the limitation. And then, yeah.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah. And one more point is the standards, the developing standards, right? So you need to strike a right balance between the standards and innovation for the definition of the interfaces. Now, developing open interfaces, if you set to the whole RIC ecosystem, you could do anything as you like, as long as you only use this particular beamforming statistic, right? There's only so many excepts that you can write when only thing you can process is a beamforming statistics, right? So people are gonna want other statistics out of the system. So developing openness is a key. So these are kind of the highlights of the challenges that we need to address, and the whole industry is addressing all these challenges. So nothing is a showstopper out of these ones.
Yeah, but I think that at least, but you need to be as honest as you are in acknowledging what the challenges are. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to address them. And I wanted to follow up. You talked about efficiency. Can you tell us about is efficiency in terms of power consumption or performance?
Yeah, so actually both. So I would say that three P's: power, performance, power, and I forget another P, price. Yeah. So it has to be a balance between, the power that we are utilizing, and then the price and the performance. So one thing I can say is we are still evaluating these small to medium-sized vendors against the incumbent vendors, and Verizon will not compromise on the efficiency and the performance when they choose, open RAN, open interfaces, open systems, right?
So basically, you want to have feature parity, or you want to have the same. You're not willing to step down in terms of perform any type of efficiency to have Open RAN. That makes sense.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely. Yeah, and now I have another follow-up question on interoperability. Clearly, we do not have a plug-and-play type of ecosystem today. Everybody acknowledges that, and that's fine. But are we ever? Is this something that we should really aim for? Because it's not a question of having an open system, it's a complex system. So plug and play, regardless of whether it's open or closed, it's just not, doesn't seem to be necessarily what you're aiming for. So how do you see the evolution of interoperability moving forward?
Correct. So interoperability is a huge piece in the puzzle, right? So today we have a monolithic architecture. I mean, in one extreme, and then we are trying to introduce multiple vendors in the ecosystem. And interoperability is a key, because you have to have interoperability with the radio unit, the CU, and the DU, and the stack up there. Now, who is going to take responsibility of the interoperability? The system integrators are, I'm sorry, the operators are the ultimate customer. They're sitting on top of the food chain, right? Now, how much of responsibility the operators will take and will pass it down to the vendors and system integrators? So that's a question, but absolutely there needs to be a very strong interoperability footprint and play in this ORAN ecosystem, which we have actually shown in the open frontal use case. Verizon was the leading the open frontal effort in this Open RAN Alliance effort, and there we demonstrated interoperability with various vendors. So that is definitely a key in the success of this ORAN Alliance or ORAN ecosystem to succeed. Yeah.
Yes, and you mentioned system integration, and I think that this is something that is becoming more and more of a topic, but I think it's a crucial one, because system integration is nothing new, but with Open RAN it takes a different type of prominence from a telco perspective, because if you have a single vendor, the vendor does the system integration.
Yep.
But now you're going to find yourself in a position of taking a wider role. Is that right? And how is that going to be working out?
Sure. Yeah. So as Open RAN matures, it will offer opportunities for new entrants into the RAN marketplace by offering microservices and disaggregated solutions. This I've talked just a few minutes ago, right? While this promise ushers new innovation and creativity in the development and service offerings. And there will be, though, increased complexity and integration costs associated with integrating different components at scale, right? And ensuring interoperability at the level of reliability the customers demand, or customers will demand, right? So one of the bigger challenges in a virtualized environment is integration, where more focus and responsibilities on the operator to ensure system integration across multiple partners, multiple vendors to meet the requirements and performance expectations, right? So extensive testing is a must, as is the tight collaboration between the operators and the plethora of suppliers and vendors to integrate, the different network functions. So the more suppliers that are introduced in the RAN environment, the RAN ecosystem, and the higher the interoperability, testing complexity, and the cost will happen, right? So this is not a challenge merely to admire, but one to aggressively solve. Now, performance, as I alluded to, is a multi-vendor environment. it can also be more difficult to optimize. For example, in a multi-vendor environment, that can require greater coordination around applying software patches, right? Which require a complex validation matrix, right? And system architecture and scale of the deployment are also factors in optimizing performance in a multi-vendor environment. Other factors, especially in the RAN world, right? The need for more precise timing and synchronization than the virtualized software, right? So workload specific acceleration, low latency load balancing, and inter-process communication, and fully integrated security that we discussed, right? So there's work to be done in this area to ensure seamless interoperability while minimizing the operational complexity. But Verizon, we know the game, and Verizon is committed to continuing its leadership as we walk through the challenges.
Yeah, and
So
I guess that in a way it's a way to really use more effectively and deeply your expertise that you have, and that's a way for different operators to differentiate as well. And so system integration is clearly a key component, but then it's not just you integrate and then you go home. You have to continue monitoring the system and measuring, making sure. So is this also going to change the way you measure the network? I mean, you might need more KPIs, you might need to keep a closer eye on what's going on because the complexity is higher.
I think your question is around what are the KPIs that we need to, how are the KPIs evolving?
Correct.
And I think, yeah, it's all the above, but we need to have, I mean, we need to kind of focus on the KPIs more from our perspective, from operator perspective, because previously when we're using one or two vendors, they had shouldered more responsibility than the operators, right? So it will be on us now to kind of manage the KPIs and manage the KPIs of the integrated system, and not only the individual components, because the vendors will be responsible for the individual network functions, individual small elements, individual microservices. But as an operator, we need to kind of keep an eye on the KPIs in a integrated fashion. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I want to also ask you about the RIC. That's another hot topic. How is the RIC coming into play in the Open RAN?
Sure. So yeah, that's a good question. So let me wind back a little bit, and talk about, let's say, 4G. So 4G was personal data. It's all about everybody having iPhones, right? That kind of stuff, right? But 5G, as I talked about, it's like business. It's like verticals and robotics, agriculture, and introduction of the RIC. So the RIC, by definition, is something new, right? The whole point of an XApp is something new, right? So the RIC incorporates AI and ML into its decision-making functionalities, and comes in two forms, right? The near real-time RIC, which controls the other RAN elements, including the CUs and the DUs, and perform network optimization actions that can take place between 10 milliseconds and 1 second, right? On the other hand, the non-real-time RIC, right? So it's a concept developed by Oran Alliance. So sits at the SMO layer, the top layer, right? And then that incorporates the intelligence into the system design to perform network management tasks, and works for control loops over 1 second, right? So essentially, the non-real-time RIC provides the near real-time RIC with network and subscriber data, right? So AI-based recommendations. And it also provides AI-based recommendation and all that, right? So the near real-time RIC provides real-time optimization for mobility management, and the non-real-time RIC can provide high levels of quality assurance, right down to the device level, by monitoring the quality of experience results that have been achieved.
Now,
So
sorry,
yeah,
go ahead.
as to summarize, the RIC is part of the ORAN architecture, and includes network automation tools like XApps and the RApps, right? That maximize the radio network's operational efficiency, right? And the RIC sits, in two different architecture, like the non-real-time RIC sits at the orchestration automation layer to handle the RApps, which look at trends and overall performance. And near real-time RIC sits at the application layer to handle the XApps and work with policy and decision making, right? So the RIG doesn't just enable the intelligent control of the RAN. It also enables the creation and operation of new applications and businesses around the RAN. So this means it's possible to build a strategy around RIG's capabilities and similar to strategies to digital platform. And to summarize, RIG introduces a new set of stakeholders in the whole RAN ecosystem, namely software developers. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, I could ask you many more questions, but I wanted to ask you sort of a final wrap-up questions. And this is really, what do you see the sort of the long-term impact of Open RAN? There's a lot of the discussion is what's, is it commercial, it's not commercial, in the next 12 months. But I think that the real implications of Open RAN are going to be much longer term. And maybe you can comment, are we going to go to be in a situation where all the RAN is going to be Open RAN? Or how is it going to change in general, the RAN and the network?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So I would start by saying that, it's of course difficult to predict the future, but if I were to guess, like all technologies, right? So old and new prevail at the same time. Some service providers are small enough to carry on with the single vendor approach, and larger ones will adopt multiple vendors and hence Open RAN. So for smaller vendors, right, there is really no need even to virtualize their network, right? And for larger ones like us, we are trying to achieve, a distributed network and multi-vendor network for various reasons. So they will all exist side by side if you consider the whole ecosystem. But our goal, Verizon's goal, is to make a more programmable network so that experience is customizable and scalable. And a key part of this paradigm is virtualizing and containerizing the network, right? So Open RAN will allow us to choose the best of breed components from various vendors. And as I said, we will not sacrifice the quality and performance of our network that we have today by choosing different vendors in the ecosystem. So as a partner of choice for world's most innovative brands working hand in hand through their digital transformation journey, we will continue to drive this emerging and exciting technology. And 5G, it's just starting to evolve to reach its potential. And working with our internal teams, transport team, access layer, core vendors, and our countless partners who build the solutions on top of our industry-leading 5G network, we will continue to advance 5G technological innovation. And as we have demonstrated throughout our history, Verizon will continue to deploy the most advanced technologies and the highest quality network with the best reliability for our customers. So ORAN can play a large part in the journey, and we will continue to pull together stakeholders from multiple industries to develop a dynamic and exciting ecosystem to build a network that moves the world forward. And the key to this evolution is the advantage of being able to decouple the hardware and software in our network using ORAN, and thereby lowering the barrier to entry and welcoming more vendors in the ecosystem.
Nirlay, thank you so much. It was great talking to you because we really got to see the bigger picture, which I think this is really what we really need to think about in terms of Open RAN. It's just more than CU, DU, and interfaces. It's a much bigger picture. So Nirlay, thanks so much for talking to us today.
My pleasure, Monica. Thank you.
And thank you to all of you listening to us. There was a great conversation. I hope you enjoyed it. And you can also read it. And this is part of a larger report that you can get at sensafili.com. Thank you.